Dragons attacked all who entered until they smelled a human's barbecue. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The smoking ruins of the V-Touring cruiser drifted through the void like a monument to hubris, its hull still glowing orange from dragon fire. Cole Bennett stood at the observation deck of the human transport vessel Wanderer, watching the wreckage tumble past, and wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake accepting this job. The dream system had been deemed impossible to colonize. For 200 years, every species in the Galactic Coalition had tried and failed to establish settlements on Dreen Prime, a world so rich in rare minerals that it could fund entire civilizations. The planet's defenders were not soldiers or automated weapon systems, but creatures that defied modern understanding. Actual dragons, massive winged reptiles that breathe plasma hot enough to melt starship hulls, intelligent enough to coordinate attacks, and aggressive enough to destroy any vessel that dared enter their atmosphere. Cole was a chef. Specifically, he was a barbecue specialist from Texas who'd spent the last 15 years cooking on various frontier colonies, following the money and the adventure. When the Coalition put out a call for a human culinary expert to join their latest dragon expedition, he'd assumed it was a mistake. Humans had only been part of the Coalition for 30 years, and most species still viewed them as primitive newcomers. But the pay was extraordinary, and Cole had always been curious about the one challenge every species had failed to overcome. The expedition commander was a V-Tauran named Cephix, a 7ft tall reptilian being with iridescent scales and a superiority complex that could fill a cargo bay. Cephix had gathered what he called the finest military minds from 12 species, equipped them with the latest shield technology and weaponry, and announced his intention to succeed where all others had failed. Cole's role, as far as he could tell, was to feed the conquerors once they'd established their beachhead. That plan had lasted approximately 47 minutes after entering Dragon Prime's atmosphere. The dragons had come from every direction, their scales shimmering in colors that seemed to shift between copper, gold, and bronze. They were enormous, some with wingspans exceeding 200 ft, their eyes glowing with an intelligence that was immediately unsettling. The largest dragon, a massive creature with scales the color of burnished gold, had unleashed a stream of plasma that vaporized the expedition's lead ship before the shields could even activate. The remaining vessels had retreated to orbit, leaving behind 15 destroyed craft and nearly 300 dead. Now, 3 days later, the survivors huddled in orbit, arguing about their next move. Cephix wanted to call an orbital bombardment. The Century military advisors suggested a massive simultaneous assault from multiple points. The Kelver scientists proposed attempting communication through mathematical sequences. Cole thought they were all missing something obvious. He'd been watching footage of the attacks on repeat, studying the dragons' behavior. They didn't attack randomly. They didn't pursue fleeing ships beyond the atmosphere. They defended their territory with precision and purpose. But there was something almost ritualistic about it. The largest dragon always attacked first. The others followed in coordinated waves, and most tellingly, they never damaged the planet surface during their defensive Maneuvers, these weren't mindless. Beasts, they were guardians. When Cephix called the next strategy meeting, Cole did something he'd never done before. He spoke up. The conference room fell silent when the human chef raised his hand. Cephix's head swiveled toward him. With visible irritation, his secondary eyelids flicking in annoyance. "Commander," Cephix said with barely concealed disdain, "what could a food preparer possibly contribute to military strategy?" Cole stood, feeling the weight of a dozen alien gazes on him. He'd dealt with hostile kitchens before, but this was different. Still, he'd learned long ago that confidence could carry you through situations where expertise failed. Cole replied calmly, "I've been watching the dragons. They're not random. They're defending something they value. Every species here has tried to take from them. Has anyone tried giving them something?" The room erupted in multiple languages. A Kelver scientist made a chittering sound that Cole's translator rendered as laughter. A Centauri warrior clicked their mandibles in what might have been amusement or derision. Cephix silenced them with a gesture and fixed Cole with a cold stare. The commander said slowly, "You propose we offer tribute to animals, to beasts that have slaughtered thousands of coalition citizens?" Cole shook his head firmly. "Not tribute. Communication. Look, I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. On Earth we've got this concept in dealing with wildlife, even intelligent wildlife. You don't start with threats, you start with respect. You offer something of value, not as surrender, but as an opening to dialogue." A Valoran tactical officer, her scales a deep purple, interjected sharply, "We have tried communication. We broadcast on every known frequency. We attempted visual signals. The dragons responded with fire." Cole nodded, acknowledging the point. "Yeah, but you communicated like you communicate with each other. Mathematical sequences, radio signals, visual patterns. These are dragons, ancient, powerful creatures that probably predate most of our civilizations. What if they don't care about our technology? What if they respond to something more basic, more universal?" The Century warrior, a being named Kalos, whose carapace bore the scars of 100 battles, leaned forward with sudden interest. The warrior asked in a deep, resonant voice, "What do you propose, human?" Cole took a breath. This was the part that would either get him laughed out of the room or killed. He said with conviction, "Let me go down there alone, unarmed, in a small shuttle with no weapon systems. Let me set up in a clearing and cook. Just cook. The smell of food, real food, prepared with care. It crosses species barriers. It's the most basic form of hospitality in almost every culture I've studied. If the dragons are intelligent, and I believe they are, they'll be curious, and curiosity is the first step to communication." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Cephix began to laugh, a hissing sound that was deeply unsettling. The commander declared with finality, "Absolutely not. I will not waste resources on such absurdity. This meeting is concluded. We will proceed with orbital bombardment in 6 hours." But Cole wasn't done. He'd come this far, and something in his gut told him he was right. He said loudly, with enough force to stop Cephix mid-turn, "If you bombard that planet, you'll destroy exactly what you came for. Those minerals you want, they'll be scattered, irradiated, worthless. You'll have spent billions of credits and hundreds of lives for nothing. My way cost you one shuttle, some food supplies, and a chef. You probably didn't want here anyway. If I'm wrong, you lose nothing you weren't already willing to sacrifice. If I'm right, you gain a planet. Kalos made a clicking sound of approval. The Century warrior said thoughtfully, the human makes a valid point, Commander. We have exhausted conventional options. An unconventional approach carries minimal risk at this juncture. Suffix's scales rippled with barely controlled anger. But Cole could see the calculation. The commander's eyes, V. Torrens, were nothing if not pragmatic. After a long moment, Suffix responded with ice in his voice. You have 12 hours, human. If you are not vaporized, and if you make any progress whatsoever, we will delay the bombardment. If you fail, we will not retrieve your remains. Do you accept these terms? Cole felt his heart hammering but kept his expression neutral. He said firmly, I accept, but I'll need access to the cargo bay and full authorization to use any food supplies on board. The commander waved a dismissive hand and said curtly, take whatever you need. Dismissed. As the meeting broke up, Kalos approached Cole quietly. The massive warrior studied him with compound eyes that seemed to see more than they should. The Century said in a low voice, I have fought many battles, human. I have learned that sometimes the greatest courage is not in facing death, but in facing it for an idea others mock. If you survive this, I would be honored to hear the tale. Cole extended his hand, and after a moment, Kalos gripped it with a chitinous appendage. The human replied with a slight smile, if I survive this, warrior, I'll cook you the best meal you've ever had. The preparation took 8 hours. Cole rated the expedition's supplies with single-minded focus, pulling together ingredients from a dozen different species provisions. He had his own supplies as well, items he'd brought from Earth specifically for this job. Hardwood chips for smoking, his custom spice blend, and 6 massive slabs of synthetic beef that were virtually indistinguishable from the real thing. He also grabbed vegetables, various alien produce that he'd learned to work with over the years, and most importantly, a selection of sweet and savory marinades. If he was going to make first contact through food, it needed to be the best damn barbecue anyone or anything had ever tasted. The shuttle they gave him was a barebones transport, just enough to get him to the surface and keep him alive. Cole spent 2 hours setting up his equipment, a massive grill he'd modified from his Century field heating unit, preparation tables, storage units to keep ingredients fresh, and his most prized possession, a smoker he'd built himself, using parts from 6 different worlds. As the shuttle descended toward Dragon Prime, Cole watched the planet grow larger in the viewport. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way. Vast forests of vegetation that glowed faintly purple in the light of the system's binary stars. Mountain ranges that scraped the sky, and scattered across the landscape what looked like massive cave systems, or perhaps ruins. Definitely a place worth protecting. The shuttle's AI, a basic but functional system, announced in a neutral tone, warning: multiple large organic signatures detected. Flight path indicates intercept course. Estimate contact in 4 minutes. Cole's hands tightened on the controls. This was it, he said aloud, trying to keep his voice steady. Broadcast on all frequencies. Plain language, no codes. Message reads: I come in peace. "I am unarmed, I wish." Only to share a meal, the AI complied, sending the message out on every channel. Cole had no idea if the dragons would understand English or if they even perceived sound the way most species did, but it felt important to try. 3 minutes, the first dragon appeared off his port side, a massive creature with scales that shimmered like molten copper. It matched his speed effortlessly, its enormous eyes fixed on the shuttle. Cole could see the intelligence there, the calculation. The dragon was deciding whether he was a threat. 2 minutes, more dragons appeared surrounding the shuttle in a formation that was undeniably military. In precision, Cole counted 7, no, 9 of them. Anyone could destroy his shuttle with a single breath. His mouth went dry, but he kept his course steady, heading for a large clearing he'd identified near a river system. 1 minute, the largest dragon, the golden one from the footage, descended from above, positioning itself directly in front of the shuttle. This close, Cole could see details invisible from orbit, scars on its scales, patterns that might have been natural or might have been decorative, and eyes that were not just intelligent but ancient. This being had seen civilizations rise and fall. The dragon opened its massive jaws, and Cole braced for the end. Instead of fire, it released a sound, a deep resonant call that made the shuttle vibrate. The other dragons responded in kind, their voices creating a harmony that was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Then they parted, allowing Cole to pass. He landed in the clearing with hands that shook only slightly. The dragons circled overhead but didn't attack. Through the viewport, Cole could see them settling onto the surrounding trees and cliff faces, watching, waiting. Time to cook. Cole opened the shuttle's cargo ramp and began unloading his equipment. The air of Dream Prime was rich with oxygen, warm but not uncomfortable, carrying scents of the alien vegetation that reminded him oddly of sage and cinnamon. He worked methodically, setting up his cooking station exactly as he would for any major event, refusing to let the audience of apex predators intimidate him. First, he got the smoker going, loading it with hardwood chips that would burn slow and fragrant. Then he prepared the main event, the beef. He'd chosen a traditional Texas-style approach, keeping the seasoning simple to let the quality of the meat and the smoke do the talking. Coarse salt, black pepper, garlic powder, a touch of paprika. He rubbed each slab with loving attention, the familiar motions calming his nerves. While the smoker came to temperature, he prepared sides, roasted vegetables in a honey glaze, a spicy bean dish he'd adapted from a Kella recipe, and something he was particularly proud of, a bread he learned to make using a grain native to the Century home world that rose beautifully and had a slightly nutty flavor. The dragons watched every movement. After about an hour, the smoke began to carry. Cole had positioned the smoker upwind deliberately, and now the rich, complex aroma of smoking meat began to drift across the clearing. It was a smell that had evolved over centuries on Earth, the product of countless refinements in the art of low and slow cooking, savory, sweet, with undertones of wood smoke and spices that triggered something primal in any being that had ever enjoyed cooked food. The reaction was immediate. The nearest dragon, a smaller one with bronze scales, lifted its head sharply, its nostrils flared wide, pulling in the scent. The creature's eyes widened, visibly, and it made a sound that was almost a purr, a deep rumbling that Cole felt in his chest. Other dragons began to stir. They shifted position, angling toward the smoke. The golden dragon, still perched on the highest point, overlooking the clearing, stood and stretched its wings, tasting the air with a forked tongue that had to be 15 ft long. Cole kept cooking. He basted the beef with a mop sauce, added more wood to maintain the smoke, and started on the vegetables. The key to great barbecue wasn't just the meat, it was the complete meal, the balance of flavors and textures that turned food into an experience. 2 hours in, the smallest dragon couldn't resist any longer. It was still huge by human standards, probably 50 feet from nose to tail, with scales that shifted between green and gold depending on the light. It descended from its perch and approached the clearing cautiously, moving with a grace that belied its size. Cole's heart rate spiked, but he forced himself to remain calm. He dealt with curious wildlife before, though never anything quite this dangerous. The dragon stopped at the edge of the clearing, perhaps a 100 ft away, and watched him work. Its eyes tracked every movement, studying the fire, the smoke, the way Cole tended his cook. Cole did something that felt insane, but also somehow right. He spoke to the dragon, keeping his voice calm and friendly, as if he were talking to a cautious dog. He said gently, "Hey there, beautiful. Yeah, smells good, doesn't it? That's oak smoke and beef. Well, synthetic beef, but it's the good stuff. You've probably never had anything like this before, probably never had anyone cook for you with respect." The dragon tilted its head, the gesture so familiar and yet so alien on something so massive. It made a questioning sound, almost a chirp, but deeper. Cole continued, his confidence growing. "Yeah, I'm talking to you. I figure you're smart enough to get the gist, even if the words don't translate. I'm not here to hurt you or take anything. I'm here to share. That's what food is for, you know. It's how we bridge gaps, how we turn strangers into friends." The dragon took 3 steps closer. Cole could feel the heat radiating from its body, could see the way its scales overlapped in patterns that were almost hypnotic. This close, he could also see something else. Symbols carved or etched into some of the scales, deliberate markings that confirmed what he'd suspected. These were not animals, these were people, just in a form he wasn't used to. Cole made a decision. He cut a portion of the beef that had been resting, placed it on a clean metal plate, and added some of the vegetables and a piece of bread. Then, moving slowly and deliberately, he walked halfway to the dragon and set the plate on the ground. He said warmly, "For you, a gift freely given, no strings, no tricks, just good food made with care." He backed away to his cooking station and waited. The dragon approached the plate cautiously, sniffing at it from several angles. Then, with surprising delicacy, it picked up the slice of beef with its teeth and pulled it into its mouth. The dragon's eyes closed as it chewed, slowly processing flavors it had never experienced. When it swallowed, the dragon made a sound that was unmistakably pleasure, a deep humming that made the ground vibrate slightly. It ate the rest of the plate's contents with more enthusiasm, then looked at Cole with what he swore was gratitude. The dragon bowed its head slightly and backed away to its previous position, settling down to watch with even more interest than before. That was the breakthrough. Within minutes, 2 more Dragons descended. Cole prepared plates for them as well, adjusting portions, because these were larger and he didn't want to run out of food. Each dragon that tasted his cooking had the same reaction: surprise, pleasure, and a clear desire for more. The golden dragon remained on its perch observing. Cole could feel its attention like a weight, the scrutiny of something that had seen everything and was not easily impressed. That was the one he needed to reach. He knew that was the leader, the guardian, the one who made the decisions. Cole went back to his smoker and checked the main pieces. They were coming along beautifully, the bark forming perfectly, the internal temperature rising at exactly the right rate. He'd been cooking for 6 hours now, and the full meal was nearly ready. Time for the grand finale. He pulled the beef, letting it rest while he finished the sides. The vegetables were caramelized perfectly, the beans were thick and savory, the bread was golden brown and filled the air with its own wonderful aroma. He prepared a full spread, the kind of feast he'd serve at a championship competition, everything arranged with care and pride. Then Cole did something he hadn't planned. He pulled out his personal knife, a family heirloom that had been his grandfather's, and carved a portion from his own plate. He ate it there in full view of all the dragons, showing them that the food was safe, that he shared in what he offered. The golden dragon reacted. It stood, unfurled wings that blotted out a significant portion of the sky, and descended. The wind from its landing nearly knocked Cole over, sent his napkins flying, and extinguished one of his warming fires. The dragon was even more massive up close, its head alone the size of a small car, its claws scoring deep grooves in the rocky ground. Cole stood his ground, though every instinct screamed at him to run. He looked up into eyes that were like molten gold and said with all the sincerity he possessed, "I made enough for everyone. Would you do me the honor of dining with me?" The dragon regarded him for a long moment, then it did something that made Cole's jaw drop. It spoke not in chirps or roars, but in words, though the voice was like nothing he'd ever heard, resonant and layered, as if multiple beings spoke in perfect harmony. The dragon said slowly, pronouncing each word with care, "You are not like the others who come to steal and conquer. You offer gift, you share fire and food, you speak with respect." Why? Cole's mind reeled. The dragons spoke English, or were they speaking their own language and somehow making themselves understood? It didn't matter. What mattered was the question. He answered honestly, his voice steady, despite his shock, because that's what intelligent beings should do when they meet for the first time. Share, not take. Listen, not demand. I'm human. My people are new to the stars, and we've made plenty of mistakes, but we've also learned that the best relationships start with breaking bread together. That's why I'm here. The dragon's expression, if such a massive scaled face could have expression, seemed almost surprised. It asked another question, its tone shifting to something that might have been curiosity. "You do not fear us?" Cole laughed. He couldn't help it. He replied with a wrathful grin, "Oh, I'm terrified. You could turn me into ash with a sneeze, but fear isn't a reason not to try to do the right thing. Besides, I've seen what you protect. Here, this planet is beautiful. If I were you, I'd defend it too. Every species that came here wanted to take. I get why you'd be hostile." The dragon lowered its massive head closer to Cole's level, studying him with an intensity that felt like being examined. On a cellular level, it stated rather. Then asked, "You understand we are not beasts?" Cole nodded firmly and said, with conviction, "I figured that out. Watching the footage of the attacks, the precision, the coordination, the restraint you show toward your own world. While defending it, you're not animals. You're a civilization, or at least a highly organized society. You're people, just not the kind most species are used." To meeting, the dragon made a sound that might have been approval. It said after what seemed like careful consideration, "I am Thorexen, first guardian of dragon, prime speaker for the flame singers. You are the first outsider to show respect in 200 cycles of your time. You offer food made with skill and heart. This is a gift we have not known. We will share your meal, human, and we will speak of why you have truly come." Cole felt relief flood through him so intensely his knees nearly buckled. He said warmly, "My name is Cole Bennett. I'm a chef, and it would be my absolute honor to feed you and your people. Thexen, as for why I'm here, that's a conversation I think we should have over dinner. Food's always better when it comes with good company." Their accent made a sound that was surprisingly close to a human laugh, a rumbling that made the trees shake. The great dragon said, with what Cole swore was amusement, "Bring your feast, Cole Bennett. We will eat and speak truth." Cole served what was probably the most important meal of his life. He brought enough food for the expedition crew of 30, which meant there was barely enough for the 9 dragons present. When he calculated their size, he arranged everything on large metal sheets that had been intended as cargo pallets, creating serving stations that the dragons could access. Thexen ate first, taking the traditional position of a leader tasting for poison, though Cole suspected it was more ritual than concern. The golden dragon sampled everything, chewing slowly and deliberately. When Thexen had approved each dish, the other dragons approached and began to eat. The reactions were extraordinary. Dragons that had seemed fierce and alien moments before now made sounds of contentment and pleasure. They ate with surprising delicacy, careful not to damage Cole's equipment, taking time to savor each component of the meal. One dragon, the bronze one that had been first to approach, actually closed its eyes while eating the beans, a rumble of happiness emanating from its chest. Cole found himself grinning. Despite the surreal nature of the situation, this was why he cooked, not for money or fame, though both were nice, but for this moment when food transcended barriers and brought beings together. He'd created that here on an alien world with creatures that terrified the entire galactic coalition. When the meal was finished, the dragons settled in a loose circle around Cole's cooking station. Thexen positioned closest to him, the great dragon's bulk blocking the wind and creating a sheltered space that felt oddly comfortable. The binary stars were setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange that were breathtaking. The began without preamble, speaking in that layered voice that commanded attention. "You said others come to take. Tell me, Cole Bennett, what does your coalition wish to steal from us?" Cole appreciated the directness. He replied honestly, "Minerals, rare elements that exist in abundance on your world but are scarce elsewhere. Elements that power our ships, our technology, our civilizations. The planet below us is worth more than most species can calculate. That's why they keep coming. keep trying to force their way in. Dragon's eyes glowed brighter, anger. Perhaps, the Raxan said with heat in his voice, they wish to tear apart our home. For their machines, they see only resources, not the living world we have. Guarded for 10,000 of your years, 10,000 years, the number staggered Cole. Humanity had barely achieved space flight in that time, he said carefully. I understand your anger, the coalition. Species see it differently, though. They see a world with resources that could save billions of lives, cure diseases, advance entire civilizations, and they see what they think are animals, preventing progress. I'm not saying they're right, but I'm explaining their perspective. Another dragon, one with deep red scales, growled low. This dragon spoke for the first time, its voice higher than their accents, but no less powerful. They are thieves who cloak their greed in pretty words. Progress, advancement, all while they destroy and take. Cole nodded in acknowledgement. He responded thoughtfully, you're not wrong, but here's the thing, and this is important. Not all of us are like that. Humans are new to the coalition. We're still learning how things work out here. Where I come from, we've got a saying, there's always a better way. Fighting doesn't have to be the only answer. The tilted its great head, studying Cole with those ancient eyes, the guardian asked pointedly, you propose what, human? That we simply allow the theft of our world? Cole shook his head firmly. He said with growing conviction, no, I propose a partnership. Look, those minerals are in the ground, right? You've been here 10,000 years. I'm guessing you don't mind them. Don't use them the way we would. They're part of your world, but not part of your way of life. What if there was a way to extract what's needed without destroying your home? What if you had control over how much is taken, where it comes from, and what you receive in return? The dragon stirred, clearly not having expected this direction. Their accent asked with what might have been skepticism, why would we trust any agreement with those who have only shown us aggression? Cole smiled slightly. He answered, because you wouldn't be making an agreement with them, you'd be making it with humanity. With people like me who believe that respect and fair dealing matter more than quick profits. The coalition is made up of hundreds of species, and yeah, some of them are aggressive and greedy, but humans were traders at heart. We built our early civilization on the idea of mutual benefit. You have something we need, we have things you might want. That's the basis of trust. The bronze dragon, who'd first approached, asked with genuine curiosity, what could you possibly offer that we would want? We have this world, we have each other. We need nothing from the stars. Cole had been thinking about this since he landed. He said slowly, letting the idea unfold as he spoke. Knowledge, technology that doesn't harm your world, but might make your lives better. Medicine if you get sick or injured. Communication devices so you could contact other worlds if you chose. Entertainment, art, culture from 1,000 species, and most importantly, protection. That last word made every dragon focus on him intently. He asked sharply, protection from what? Cole gestured toward the sky. He explained seriously, from what just happened. Orbital bombardment. The commander up there was ready to glass this planet from space because you were in the way. If you had allies, real allies who had your interests protected by treaty and law, that couldn't happen. The coalition has rules. They're not great rules, and They're not always followed, but they exist. A protected species with recognized territory and resources can't be attacked without massive consequences. Their accent was silent. For a long moment, when the guardian spoke again, there was a weight to the words that suggested ancient consideration. The dragon said, thoughtfully, you offer us a place in the order of the stars, recognition as people, not beasts. This is a thing of value, but it requires we trust beings who have given us no reason for trust. Cole stood and walked closer to the Raxan, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from the dragon's scales. He looked up into those golden eyes and said with absolute sincerity, then trust me, I'm one human, yeah, but I'm the one who came here with food instead of weapons. I'm the one who saw you for what you are, instead of what others feared. Let me be the bridge. Let me go back up there and negotiate on your behalf. I'll make sure any agreement protects your world first and profits everyone second. That's my promise. The silence that followed stretched for what felt like an eternity. Cole could hear the alien wind in the strange trees, the distant call of creatures he couldn't identify, the crackling of his dying fires. Then Theorax did something unexpected. The great dragon extended one massive claw, and gently, so carefully it was almost tender, touched Cole's chest. Thoraxin declared with what sounded like formality, Cole Bennett, chef of Earth, speaker of respect, I name you friend of the flame singers. You have shown us honor. You have offered gift without expectation. You have spoken truth even when lies might have served you better. We will trust you to speak for us to the Star Walkers, but know this: if you betray our trust, if you lead us to harm, we will remember, and the flame singers never forget. Cole felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. He said solemnly, I understand, and I won't let you down. I promise you that. The bronze dragon spoke up, its voice carrying an edge of humor. Before he goes, could he perhaps teach us the secrets of this food, the smoke and spice and technique? If we are to deal with visitors, we should have means to welcome them as Cole has welcomed our trust. Cole laughed, the tension breaking. He said with genuine enthusiasm, I would be honored to teach you, though I got to warn you, good barbecue takes time and patience, lots of both. Theaxin's eyes glowed with what Cole was now certain was amusement. The guardian said, we have lived 10,000 years human. I believe we can manage patience. The return to the Wanderer was vastly different from Cole's departure. He ascended with an escort of 3 dragons, including Thorax, their formation protecting the shuttle rather than threatening it. The effect on the coalition fleet was immediate and dramatic. Alarms blared across every ship as the dragons approached. Weapon systems came online, shields activated to maximum. Cole could hear Cephix screaming orders over the comm channels, demanding to know why the dragons were attacking. Cole overrode the command channel, his voice cutting through the chaos. He said firmly, stand down, all ships stand down. The dragons are not hostile, they're escorting me back. We're here to negotiate. The silence that followed was almost as loud as the alarms had been. Then Cephix's voice came through, tight with barely controlled fury. The commander demanded, explain yourself, human. Explain this immediately. Cole took a breath. This was the moment. He said clearly, I made Contact with the Dragon Prime Guardians. They're called the Flame Singers, and they're a sentient species with a civilization that predates most of ours. They speak, they reason, and they're willing to talk. More than that, they've authorized me to negotiate on their behalf. Another voice joined the channel. Kalos, the Century Warrior. The warrior said with what sounded like satisfaction. The human succeeded where our weapons failed. I admit to being impressed. Cole Bennett. Cole replied gratefully, thanks Kalos, Commander. Suffix, I'm requesting permission to dock with their accent. The Flame Singer. Guardian, we need a meeting room large enough to accommodate a dragon and representatives from the coalition. We've got a deal to work out. Meeting that followed would become legendary in coalition history. Suffix, to his credit, recognized an opportunity when he saw one, even if it came from a source he dismissed. The Wanderer's main cargo bay was cleared and repurposed, with heating elements brought in to keep Thuring comfortable and communication equipment set up to broadcast the negotiations to the other coalition ships. Thixon was magnificent in the artificial light, scales gleaming like molten metal, wings folded with precise dignity. The dragon commanded the space, with presence alone making the assembled representatives of 12 species seem small in comparison. Suffix opened with expected pomposity, speaking of coalition interests and galactic law. Thixon listened politely, then calmly dismantled every argument with logic that was sharp as claws. The Guardian made it clear Dream Prime belonged to the Flame Singers. Any access to resources would be on their terms, with their oversight and with compensation they deemed fair. Cole found himself in the unexpected position of mediator, translating not language but intent and cultural context. When Cephix tried to pressure Thorixon with veiled military threats, Cole intervened and said firmly, Commander, that approach won't work. The Flame Singers have defended their world for 10,000 years. They're not intimidated by fleets, but they are open to reasonable partnership if you can show them respect. When the Kelver scientists tried to argue that minerals were wasted if not utilized, Cole explained and said carefully to the Flame Singers, those minerals are part of their world's ecosystem. They're not wasted, they're serving a purpose we might not understand, but they has indicated willingness to allow limited extraction if it doesn't harm the planetary balance. That's more than you'd get by force. The breakthrough came when Kalos surprisingly provided support. The Century Warrior addressed their acts directly and said with deep respect, Guardian, my people value strength and honor in battle. You have both. You have defended your home against overwhelming odds and prevailed. There is no shame in negotiating from a position of power. What would you consider fair terms? Thixon seemed to appreciate the directness. The dragon outlined demands that were, Cole thought, remarkably reasonable. Limited mining rights in designated zones to be determined by Flame Singer geologists who understood the planet structure. Full recognition of the Flame Singers as a sovereign species with protected territory, a seat in the galactic coalition with voting rights equal to any other species. Technology transfer focused on medical science, communication and agriculture, and a permanent human liaison to facilitate cultural exchange. The last point made everyone look at Cole. Thixon stated calmly, Cole Bennett has earned our Trust, if humanity will permit it, we request he remain as our voice to the coalition and the coalition's voice to us. He understands the value of respect. Cephix looked like he wanted to object, but the practical considerations were too strong. Peaceful resolution to the drain situation would make his career. He said stiffly, the coalition will need to approve these terms officially, but I am authorized to accept them in principle. Pending ratification, we have an agreement. Thixon extended a claw and, after a moment of confusion, Cephix extended his own hand, the gesture of the clawed grip, symbolic of the bridge between species, was captured by a dozen recording devices and would be broadcast across the known galaxy within hours. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. Cole found himself transformed from a simple chef into a diplomat, cultural ambassador, and unlikely celebrity. The story of the human who made peace with dragons through barbecue captured imaginations across dozens of worlds. He was interviewed, analyzed, and celebrated in ways that made him deeply uncomfortable. But the real work was more important than the fame. Cole split his time between the Wanderer and Dream Prime, helping to establish the frameworks for cooperation. He worked with Flame Singer representatives to identify mining zones that wouldn't disrupt their territorial needs. He taught cooking classes to young dragons, eager to learn about food preparation as an art form. He helped design communication protocols that respected both technological and traditional methods. The Flame Singers, it turned out, had a rich and complex culture that had been invisible to the species who'd only seen them as obstacles. They were artists, philosophers, and historians who passed knowledge through an oral tradition that spanned millennia. They had technology of their own based on biological and chemical principles, rather than electronics that solve problems in ways coalition science hadn't considered. Thixon became not just Cole's contact, but his friend. The ancient dragon had a dry sense of humor and a perspective on galactic politics that was refreshingly blunt. During one late-night conversation with Cole, sitting beside a fire and Thoroxin lounging nearby like a massive content cat, the Guardian shared something profound. Thixon said thoughtfully, "You know, Cole Bennett, when you first arrived, I almost burned your little ship from the sky. Only the strange lack of weapons made me curious. Then I smelled your cooking and I thought, perhaps you were trying to poison us with something new. But you ate first, shared willingly, spoke with respect. In 10,000 years, no outsider had done these simple things. It shames me that such simple gestures were so revolutionary." Cole poked at the fire, considering his response. He said slowly, "I don't think you should feel shame. You protected your people from real threats for a long time, but yeah, it's sad that basic respect was so rare. Makes me wonder how many other conflicts in the galaxy might have been avoided with better communication and a willingness to see others as people instead of obstacles." The dragon rumbled agreement and replied, "Your species is young, but you have wisdom that some elder races lack. The coalition will be better for having humans in it, I think. Though I suspect you will cause much chaos with your unconventional approaches." Cole grinned and said with a laugh, "Cha can be good sometimes, shakes things up, makes people reconsider their assumptions. Though I'll admit, I never expected my chaos to involve teaching dragons the fine art of slow smoking beef." the maid. That laughing sound deep and resonant, and responded with clear amusement that Bronze Dragon Sarah has become obsessed with your techniques. She has been experimenting with local game, trying to replicate your methods. Last week she created something she called Spicy Sweet Wind Rider that was actually quite remarkable. Cole felt a surge of pride. At that, he said warmly, "That's fantastic. Food is a language all its own. Every culture has its cuisine, its way of transforming ingredients into something meaningful. I'd love to try her cooking." The Guardian's expression softened as much as a massive scaled face could soften. Thixon said with genuine warmth, "You will be welcome at our fires for all your days, Cole Bennett. You have given us more than a treaty or access to the stars. You have given us the recognition that we are people worthy of respect and friendship. That is a gift beyond measure." Cole felt his throat tighten with emotion. He replied sincerely, "The gift goes both ways. That you've taught me that intelligence and civilization can take forms we never imagined. You've shown me that sometimes the simplest gestures, sharing a meal, speaking with honesty, can achieve more than all the weapons in the galaxy. I'm the one who should be grateful." They sat in companionable silence after that, watching the binary stars rise over the alien landscape. Two beings from wildly different worlds who had found common ground over barbecue and mutual respect. The formal ratification of the Dream Treaty took place 6 months after Cole's initial landing. Representatives from every coalition species gathered on a neutral station, and for the first time in coalition history, dragons attended a diplomatic function. Thixon led a delegation of 5 flame singers, each representing different aspects of their society. The ceremony itself was remarkably dramatized, which Cole knew was a minor miracle given galactic politics. The terms were read, voted on, and approved with only minimal grandstanding from various parties. Dream Prime was recognized as sovereign flame singer territory. Limited mining rights were granted under strict environmental oversight. The flame singers received full voting membership in the coalition, and Cole Bennett was officially appointed as the first human interpal liaison with specific responsibility for flame singer relations. After the formal business concluded, there was, of course, a reception, and because Cole had been allowed to plan it, the reception centered around food from dozens of worlds, including a massive barbecue station where he'd spent the previous day smoking enough meat to feed 200 beings of various sizes. The sight of dragons mingling with Vitorians, Zenturi, Kelver, and dozens of other species, all united by enjoyment of good food, was something Cole wished he could freeze in time. Barriers dissolved over shared meals. Species that had been ready to go to war 6 months ago were now exchanging recipes and cultural practices. Cafos approached Cole during the reception, the Zenturi warrior moving with easy grace despite the crowds. The warrior said warmly, "You have done something remarkable, my friend. I have fought in 37 conflicts across my life. I have seen peace treaties signed and broken, but this feels different. This feels like it might actually last." Cole accepted a drink from a passing server, something alcoholic from a Kelver brewery that was surprisingly smooth. He responded thoughtfully, "I think it's because everyone involved gets something they Value, the coalition gets access to. Resources they need, the Flame Singers. Get recognition and protection, and everyone gets to feel like they did the right thing instead of just the profitable thing. That's a foundation you can build on. Cephix appeared as, well, the Vitoran commander having undergone something of a transformation. While still formal and somewhat stiff, the commander had developed a grudging respect for unconventional approaches. Cephix said with careful sincerity, Bennett, I must acknowledge that your methods, while unorthodox, achieved results that military force could not. The coalition has granted me combination for the successful dream. Negotiation, in honesty, that combination belongs to you. Cole shook his head firmly. He said graciously, Commander, you made the call to let me try. That took courage and flexibility. The credit is shared. Besides, I just cooked some food and talked to people. You're the one who had to sell it to the coalition bureaucracy. That's the real achievement. The commander's scales rippled in. What Cole had learned was valor and pleasure at a compliment. Cephix replied, his tone warming slightly. Perhaps we make a functional team after all. I have been authorized to offer you a position in coalition diplomatic services should you choose to accept. Your unique approach to first contact situations could prove valuable. Cole considered it for a moment, looking around the reception at the mingling species at the deep end conversation with a group of Kelver scientists at the general atmosphere of cooperation and goodwill. He said with certainty, I appreciate the offer, Commander, but I think I'm needed more on Dragon Prime right now. The Flame Singers and I have just scratched the surface of cultural exchange. Besides, someone needs to make sure the mining operations respect the treaty terms. I can do that better on the ground than in some diplomatic office. Cephix nodded, understanding, and responded, a wise choice. Very well. The offer remains open should you change your mind. Now, if you will excuse me, Guardian the Raxon has indicated a desire to speak with me about establishing an educational exchange program. Apparently some young Flame Singers wish to study coalition technology, while some coalition students might benefit from learning Flame Singer historical perspectives. As the commander moved away, Cole found himself alone for a moment, taking in the scene. This was it. This was the moment he'd worked toward, proof that his crazy idea had not just worked, but had created something lasting and meaningful. A young human approached, nervous and clearly starstruck. The kid couldn't have been more than 20, wearing a coalition scientific corps uniform. The young man stammered, Mr. Bennett, sorry to bother you, sir, but I just wanted to say thank you. I'm studying xenobiology, and before the Dragon Treaty, my professor said we'd probably never get a study species like the Flame Singers up close because of the conflicts. Now I have an internship approved to spend 6 months on Dragon Prime studying dragon biology and culture. Because of what you did, my entire field is opening up, so thank you. Cole smiled, feeling that familiar warmth that came from knowing you'd made a real difference. He said kindly, that's great, kid. What's your name? The young man straightened up and said proudly, Aaron Blake, sir, 3rd year xenobiology student from the Mars Academy. Cole extended his hand and said warmly, well, Aaron Blake, when you get to Dragon Prime, look me up. I'll introduce you to Sarif, one of the Flame Sirs who's been working with me on cultural exchange. She's brilliant and Loves talking about biology from the flame singer perspective, fair warning. Though she'll also try to feed you her experimental cooking and it's hit or miss whether it'll be delicious or terrifying. Aaron's face lit up with excitement. He exclaimed, really, that would be incredible. Thank you, sir. I can't wait. As the young scientist hurried off, presumably to tell his friends, Cole felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to find Thorax and had approached silently, the massive dragon moving with surprising stealth. When it chose to, the Guardian observed quietly, you give others opportunities to learn and grow. This is good leadership, Cole Bennett. You do not hoard knowledge or access, but share it freely. This is why our partnership will endure. Cole looked up at his friend and said with deep sincerity, I learned from the best Thoraxan you could have destroyed every ship that came to your world. Instead, you waited, watched, and gave me a chance when I approached with respect. That's the kind of wisdom that takes millennia to develop. I'm just applying the same principle on a smaller scale. Thixon's eyes glowed with warmth, and the dragon said something Cole would remember for the rest of his life. The Guardian stated, 10,000 years. We guarded our world, Cole Bennett. 10,000 years, we saw only enemies and thieves in the stars. You came with fire and food and respect, and in one day changed everything. The flame singers have a saying, the smallest ember can light the greatest fire. You were our ember. Whatever comes from this treaty, whatever good spreads from our example. It began with one human who chose to cook instead of conquer. Never forget the power of that choice. Cole felt tears prick his eyes but didn't bother hiding them. He responded, voice thick with emotion, I won't forget, my friend. I promise you that. The reception continued late into the station's night cycle. Cole eventually found himself back at his barbecue station, not because he needed to cook more, but because it felt right to be there. The smell of smoke and spices had become synonymous with peace in his mind. Reminder that simple gestures could have profound impacts. As he tended the still, warm coals, various beings stopped by to talk. Some wanted recipes, others wanted advice on dealing with difficult first contact situations. A few just wanted to share their appreciation for what he'd accomplished. Each conversation reminded Cole that change, real change, happen one interaction at a time. Near the end of the night, when most guests had departed and only a few stragglers remained, Cole found himself in conversation with a group of young dragons who had accompanied the flame singer delegation. They were full of questions about Earth, about human culture, about cooking techniques and spices, and the incredible variety of foods humans had developed. One young dragon, her scales a brilliant sapphire blue, asked with genuine curiosity, Cole Bennett, why is food so important to humans? We flame singers eat to sustain ourselves, but you make it art and ritual and diplomacy. What drives this obsession? Cole thought about it. Really consider the question, he answered, slowly letting the ideas form as he spoke. I think it's because food is one of the few things that crosses every barrier. Everyone eats, every culture develops its own approach to transforming raw ingredients into something nourishing and hopefully delicious. When you share a meal with someone, you're sharing time, effort, creativity, and a piece of your culture. It's intimate in a way that doesn't require physical touch or even a common language. You can tell a lot about People by what they eat and how they prepare it, and maybe most importantly, it's an act of care, cooking for someone. Says, I value you enough to spend my time making something good for you. That message translates across species. The young dragons absorb this, their eyes reflecting the dying coal's light. Another one with emerald scales said, thoughtfully, then your barbecue was not just food, it was a statement of care and value toward beings you had never met. You told us through smoke and spice that you saw us as worthy of your time and skill. No wonder, guardian. The Raxan was moved. We flame singers understand the language of gifts and gestures. You spoke it fluently without knowing our specific customs. Cole smiled at the insight. He responded warmly, exactly, and now you're learning the language too. I've tasted Sarah's cooking and it's got that same spirit in it, that care and creativity. You're adapting human techniques to flame singer ingredients and preferences, creating something new that bridges both cultures. That's what I hope comes from all this. Not just coexistence, but genuine cultural exchange that enriches everyone involved. The sapphire dragon bobbed her head in agreement and declared, when I return to Dragon Prime, I will study this art of cooking. Perhaps I will become the second flame singer chef, learning from Cole Bennett's example. There should be more of us who understand this bridge you have built. Pride swelled in Cole's chest. He said enthusiastically, I'd be honored to teach you, and you know what? I bet if we set up a proper culinary school on Dragon Prime, we could get students from all over the coalition. Imagine dragons, humans, Taurans, Zenturi, and a dozen other species all learning to cook together, sharing techniques and traditions. That's the kind of lasting peace you can build, one meal at a time. The young dragons chittered excitedly among themselves, already planning and dreaming. As Cole watched them, he realized this was his real legacy, not the treaty itself, but the possibilities it opened. Generation of beings who would grow up seeing cooperation as normal, who would build relationships across species lines that previous generations thought impossible. They joined the group quietly, having finished conversations with various diplomats. The guardian observed the enthusiastic young dragons and said with paternal warmth, they are planning to revolutionize flame singer culture with your cooking arts. Cole Bennett, I hope you are prepared for the chaos this will bring. Cole laughed and replied with a grin, chaos can be creative, remember. Besides, I have feeling the galaxy could use more chefs and fewer warriors. No offense to the warriors out there, but you can't solve every problem with plasma breath or laser cannons. Kalos, who had approached to overhear the last comment, clicked in amusement and said, none taken, human. I am a warrior by training and inclination, but I have learned from you that sometimes the bravest action is to extend a hand rather than draw a weapon, or in your case, to light a fire and cook a meal. It is a lesson I will carry with me. The Zenturi warrior paused, then added something that seemed to cost him effort to admit. I have sent a request to the Coalition Military Academy to develop a new training module on alternative first contact strategies using your dream approach as a case study. Future officers should learn that violence is not always the solution, even when facing unknown threats. Cole was genuinely touched. He said with sincere gratitude, Kalos, that means more to me than you know. If even one conflict gets avoided, because someone tries talking and sharing before shooting, this whole crazy adventure will have been worth it. The warrior placed a chit in his hand on Cole's shoulder and stated firmly, "You have changed more than you know, Cole Bennett. The ripples of your choices will spread far beyond Dragon Prime. It has been an honor to witness your work." As the night finally wounded down and beings began departing for their respective ships and quarters, Cole found himself alone with the Raxin one. Last time, the great dragon had been silent for a while, watching the empty reception hall with those ancient, knowing eyes. Finally Thorax spoke, his voice quiet but carrying weight. The Guardian said reflectively, 10,000 years is a long time, Cole Bennett. I have seen stars born and die. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I have guarded my people through ages of peace and periods of war, but I have never seen change come so swiftly or so completely as what you have brought. In less than one of your years, you have transformed our relationship with the entire galaxy. It is humbling and terrifying in equal measure. Cole heard the vulnerability in those words and responded gently, "Change is always scary, especially when it comes fast. But you and your people are not giving up who you are. You're adding to it. You're still the Flame Singers, still the guardians of Dragon Prime. You've just decided that guardianship can include partnership instead of only defense. That takes more courage than standing alone ever did." The dragon's expression softened and Thixon said, with deep emotion, "You see the heart of things, human. Yes, we choose to be guardians still, but now we guard not just against threats but for possibilities. We protect our world so it can be shared carefully, so its wonders can be known by others, so the Flame Singers can take our place among the stars, not as conquerors but as contributors. This is your gift to us, the vision of a different path." Cole felt the weight of those words and replied with equal seriousness, "And your gift to me, to humanity, to the whole coalition is showing that even ancient conflicts can be resolved, that beings, so different they seem alien to each other, can find common ground. You didn't have to give me a chance. You didn't have to taste my cooking or listen to my crazy proposal, but you did, and that openness changed everything." The lowered his massive head to Cole's level and said with the solemnity of a vow, "Then let us make a promise to each other. Cole Bennett, I promise that the Flame Singers will honor this treaty, will work in good faith with the coalition, and will remember always that you came to us with respect and care. What promise will you make in return?" Cole didn't hesitate. He said firmly, "I promise that as long as I draw breath, I will protect Flame Singer interests. I will ensure your voice is heard in coalition councils. I will teach any who wish to learn about the culture and wisdom of the Flame Singers, and I will never forget that this all started with a simple truth: everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their form or origin. That's my promise, Thixon, and I will keep it until my last day." The dragon and the human stood together in the empty hall, representatives of worlds so different they might never have found peace, now bound by friendship and mutual respect. It was a moment that transcended species, a connection that proved understanding was possible when beings chose to see each other as people rather than obstacles. Eventually they parted ways. The return to the Flame Singer delegation's quarters, and Cole made his way to his own small room on the station as he lay in bed exhausted, but content. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from a barbecue chef in Texas to the architect of Enterprise peace. It was absurd, impossible, and absolutely real. His communication device ched with a message from Earth. His brother, who ran the family restaurant back in Houston, had sent a video message. Cole played it, and his brother's familiar face filled the screen. His brother said with a mix of pride and disbelief, "Cole, you crazy son of a gun, you're all over the news here. They're calling you the Dragon Whisperer, the barbecue diplomat, and about a dozen other ridiculous names. Mom's been crying happy tears for 2 days straight. Dad keeps telling everyone at the restaurant that he taught you everything you know, which we both know is only half true, but seriously, little brother, what you've done is incredible. You've made the whole family, hell, the whole planet proud. Just don't forget us little people when you're off being a famous galactic ambassador or whatever you are now." Cole smiled, feeling homesick and happy in equal measure. He recorded a response, keeping it simple. He said warmly, "Never going to forget where I came from, big brother, and tell Dad he's absolutely right. He did teach me everything I know, the smoking technique I used to impress the dragons. That's his recipe from the old smoker behind the restaurant, the spice blend, Grandpa's secret mix. Everything I did up here I learned from family. I just applied it in a place nobody expected. Give everyone my love. I'll be home to visit as soon as I can, and yeah, I might need to borrow the restaurant for a special event. Turns out a young dragon named Sarah wants to learn authentic Earth barbecue, and I figured where better to teach her than the place where it all started." He sent the message and settled back, imagining the look on his family's faces when a dragon showed up at their modest Texas restaurant. The thought made him laugh out loud. Some things were just too perfectly absurd to be anything but destiny. The following month solidified the peace. Mining operations began under careful Flame Singer supervision, with human engineers working alongside dragon geologists to ensure minimal environmental impact. The minerals extracted flowed into coalition markets, easing shortages and advancing technologies across dozens of worlds. The profits were split according to the treaty terms, with the Flame Singer portion going into a cultural development fund that supported education, art, and scientific research. Cole split his time between Dream Prime and various coalition worlds, serving as both liaison and living proof that cooperation worked. He gave lectures, taught cooking classes that became unexpectedly popular diplomatic events, and quietly advised on several other first contact situations where his approach of respect and cultural exchange proved valuable. But his heart remained on Dream Prime, where the real work of building understanding happened. Daily, he established the Interpecies Culinary Institute in consultation with Sarah, who had indeed become the second Flame Singer chef and his partner in creating a curriculum that taught cooking as a language of peace. Students from 30 species enrolled in the first class, learning not just techniques but the philosophy behind using food as a bridge between cultures. The institute became famous for its graduation ceremony, where students prepared a feast representing their home culture to share with classmates. The sight of beings from across the galaxy sitting together. Sharing meals and stories became a powerful symbol of what the coalition could be at its best. One evening, nearly a year after his initial landing, Cole sat with their accent overlooking valley where a flame singer settlement had stood for thousands of years. Binary stars painted the sky in familiar purples and oranges, and the air smelled of the local vegetation he'd grown to love. That broke the comfortable silence with an observation. The Guardian said thoughtfully, "Do you ever regret it, Cole Bennett, the quiet life you could have had if you had not answered that call to join the expedition? You could be cooking in comfort on Earth, rather than navigating the complexities of galactic politics and cultural exchange." Cole considered the question seriously before answering. He replied, with certainty, not for a second, "Yeah. This is harder than running a restaurant. It's more stressful, more complicated, and sometimes I'm in way over my head, but I've been part of something that matters. I've helped build bridges that will last for generations. I've made friends with actual dragons, which is something I never even dreamed was possible. And I've proven, at least to myself, that the smallest actions done with the right spirit can change the world. How could I regret that?" The dragon made that rumbling sound of approval and responded, "You have the wisdom of contentment, human. Many beings spend lifetimes chasing importance and never find it. You stumbled into it by being true to your nature, offering hospitality and respect. There is a lesson in that for all of us." Cole smiled and said, "The lesson is that barbecue solves everything. I'm thinking of having that engraved on my tombstone." Thixon laughed, the sound rolling across the valley like thunder, and replied with amusement, "The flame singers will ensure your tomb is magnificent, and that saying will indeed be carved into it, along with your true title, Cole Bennett, the human who taught dragons that the galaxy tastes better when shared." As the stars emerged in the darkening sky, human and dragon sat together in friendship, proof that the most unlikely connections could become the strongest. The barbecue that had started as a desperate gambit had become a symbol of a new era, one where beings from different worlds chose understanding over conflict, sharing over hoarding, and friendship over fear. Somewhere in orbit, mining ships worked in harmony with flame singer overseers, extracting resources that would fuel the coalition's future. In the Institute, students from a dozen species learned to create meals that honored their diverse heritages while celebrating their common ground. And across the galaxy, diplomats and leaders studied the Dragon Treaty as a template for peaceful resolution. But here in this moment, none of that mattered as much as the simple truth that a human and a dragon had become friends, and in doing so had proven that the distances between worlds were nothing compared to the connections that could be forged with patience, respect, and a really good rack of ribs. Cole eventually stood, stretching muscles stiff from sitting. He said with warm affection, "I should head back. Got an early class tomorrow, and I promised the students we'd tackle century spice techniques. Apparently their cuisine uses flavor compounds that are borderline hallucinogenic to some species, so that should be interesting." Thixon rose as well and said, "I will fly with you part way. The night is pleasant, and I find I enjoy our conversations more than I anticipated. When you first landed with your smoking meats and strange proposal." They walked together toward the settlement, their mismatched strides somehow falling into a comfortable rhythm. Cole thought about how far they'd all come, how much had changed, and how much more was possible. The future was uncertain, as futures always were, but it was bright with potential. And it had all started because one human chef decided that respect and a good meal could open more doors than weapons ever could. In the end, that was the real humanity. Yeah, moment, not conquering or dominating, but connecting and elevating, not taking what could be seized, but offering what could be shared. As they reached the edge of the settlement where other flame singers gathered around evening fires of their own, Thixon paused and made one final observation. The Guardian said with deep sincerity, "You know, Cole Bennett, when the first ships came to our world 200 years ago, I wondered if we would ever find beings worth knowing among the stars. I thought perhaps we flame singers would remain alone, different, forever set apart by our nature and our duty. Thank you for proving me wrong. Thank you for showing us that family and friendship can cross any divide if both sides are willing to build the bridge. You have enriched our lives beyond measure." Cole felt tears prick his eyes. For the second time that year, he replied, voice rough with emotion, "Enrichment goes both ways, old friend. You've taught me that wisdom comes in forms we don't expect, that guardianship is the highest calling, and that ancient beings can still choose change when change serves their people. I'm the one who should be grateful." They parted. Their dragon ascending to the twilight sky and human walking into the warm glow of the settlement. Behind Cole, the institute stood as a monument to possibility. Ahead, a community of beings from across the stars prepared evening meals, shared stories, and built the foundations of lasting peace. And somewhere in a small restaurant in Texas, a family displayed a photo of their son standing beside a golden dragon, both looking impossibly happy. The caption read simply, "Cole Bennett, chef and peacemaker." The plaque beneath it held a quote that had become famous across the coalition: "When you cook for someone, you tell them they matter." That message works on any world, in any language, for any species. It was the truth that had changed a galaxy, delivered through smoke, spice, and the simple act of caring enough to share a meal. And in the grand sweep of cosmic history, in the endless catalog of first contacts and interspecies relations, it would be remembered as the moment humanity showed the stars that sometimes the greatest strength is not in weapons or ships or technology, but in the willingness to see others as worthy of respect, to offer friendship before demanding submission, and to believe that understanding is always possible if you're willing to put in the work. Cole Bennett, a barbecue chef from Texas, had started with nothing but a grill, some good meat, and a crazy idea. He'd ended up changing the galaxy, and while he'd be the first to say he was just one person who got lucky, the truth was simpler and more profound. He was one person who chose kindness and respect over fear, who believed in the power of shared meals and honest conversation, and who proved that humanity's greatest export to the stars wasn't technology or military might, but the simple, revolutionary idea that everyone, no matter how different, deserves a seat at the table. The dragons had attacked all who entered their world for 10,000 years, defending their home against an endless parade of threats and thieves. Then a human arrived with barbecue, spoke with respect, and offered friendship, and everything changed. Because in the end, that's what humanity brought to the galaxy, not conquest, not domination, but connection, the understanding that the universe is better when beings work together, when differences are celebrated rather than feared, and when a good meal can be the first step toward lasting peace. Cole Bennett taught the galaxy to appreciate good barbecue, but more importantly, he taught them to appreciate each other. And that was the real miracle, not that dragons and humans became friends, but that friendship itself became the foundation for a new way of reaching for the stars together. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one, and I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like.